What's up there guys, this is Cob, and in this video we're going to talk about the incoming buffs to Horde racial abilities. These updates are scheduled to go live in about a week, and a lot of people have been asking me what I think about them, so in this video I'm going to try and cover all of my thoughts on the changes. Do bear in mind that I play solely PvP if you're not familiar with the channel, so I don't really have a perspective on how these changes might or might not impact PvE. So just going down in order, we have the Blood Elf racial buffs. Arcane Torrent now silences all enemies in an 8-yard radius for 3 seconds, up from 2 seconds, and the cooldown has been reduced to 1.5 minutes, down from 2 minutes. So for me, we are starting with the biggest racial buff here. I'll talk about why I think that this is the biggest buff a little bit later, but this one is definitely huge. A 3-second duration AoE blanket silence on a 1.5 minute cooldown really is strong. Obviously this benefits melees a lot more than it does casters, just because they're playing, up in people's faces a little bit more. And being even more specific, this buff helps our Blood Elf warriors, monks and red paladins more than the other melee classes. This is because rogues already have a silence in Garrett, or Garrot as some people say, and this obviously shares the DR with the Blood Elf racial silence. Death Knights are a little bit of a grey area on that matter. It really depends if they spec into Asphyxiate or stick with Strangulate. Honestly, all Blood Elf players will feel this buff in PvP though, no matter what class you play, but it will have the biggest impact on Red Paladins, Warriors and Monks. Next up we have the Goblins. Rocket Barrage now has a 1.5 minute cooldown, down from 2 minutes, and Rocket Jump now has a 1.5 minute cooldown, also down from 2 minutes. These changes are kinda cool, but also kind of underwhelming. The Goblin racials are pretty weak, so reducing their cooldowns and allowing you to therefore use a weak spell a little bit more often doesn't make them much stronger. It would have been cool to see Rocket Jump go down to maybe a 1 minute cooldown. To me, it's Rocket Jump that's the better of the two spells in PvP. With a 1 minute cooldown, maybe it could start to compete with the other Horde racials, but as it stands, Orcs, Undead and Blood Elves, maybe even Trolls, all play better at the Goblins' pool of classes than the Goblins do themselves. At least from a PvP point of view. Next we have the Orc racial buff. Hardiness now reduces the duration of stun effects by an additional 20%, up from 15%. This has taken an already good racial and made it that little bit better. I'm not really a big Orc player myself, but I do know that they are one of the best PvP races on the Horde side because of hardiness and their built-in unused trinket, Blood Fury. This buff pretty much solidifies their top 3 position in the best Horde PvP races. It isn't game-breaking, but at least an effort is being made to try and bring Orc Shamans, for example, up to par with the likes of the Master Race Dwarf Shamans. Anyways, I like this one because it's not too much and not too little. Now for the Troll buff, Voodoo Shuffle now reduces the duration of all movement impairing effects by 20%, up from 15%. Trolls still be flipping out Mon. It actually does say that in the official patch notes. I feel like this is the least impactful racial buff of them all. I think it would have been... it wouldn't have been unreasonable to see the Voodoo Shuffle buff to a 25 or even a 30% reduction in the duration of snare effects. 15% up to 20 isn't much. It's an extra 0.7 of a second off of a hamstring, an extra 0.4 of a second off a Chains of Ice. It's extra underwhelming because a lot of people who roll Troll in PvP do it to play a Druid, and they can just shift out of most snares anyway. Not like the Orc racial hardiness, which you're much more likely to feel the benefits of. So it is good, but I would have liked to have seen a bigger buff. Trolls are one of my favourite races, and it's a wee bit sad seeing them so underrepresented in PvP. And finally we have the Tauren buff. War Stomp now stuns enemies for 3 seconds, up from 2 seconds, and the cooldown has been reduced to 1.5 minutes, down from 2 minutes. On the surface this one looks really good, maybe just as good as the Blood Elf racial, but even though it is a nice buff, I'd argue that it's not something to go quite crazy about. First of all, War Stomp has a cast time. Granted, it is a tiny cast time, but you still have to stop what you're doing and stand still to get it off. Unlike a Blood Elf's Arcane Torrent. Now it's also important to consider diminishing returns. Most classes that a Tauren can play already have stuns built into their existing spellbook. The exceptions are priests, maybe druids and shamans if you ignore Cap Totem. The problem here is that if you're playing a Horde priest, you're usually better off being undead for Will of the Forsaken. If you're playing a Horde Shaman, you usually want to be playing Orc for hardiness and for Blood Fury when you pop Ascendance. And even if you're playing a Druid, you can just spec into Mighty Bash, which is a lot more reliable than War Stomp, and play Troll. But Tauren and Troll are of course both decent for Druid. So you can get good use from War Stomp. It's going to be a really strong racial, but it does have problems with screwing up DRs for you and your team in arenas. Maybe a better buff would have been to leave the stun at a 2-second duration, but remove it from the stun DR or something. Maybe that would have been too strong, I don't know. So yeah, for me it is a really solid buff here. It's just not quite on the same level as the Blood Elf racial buff. So all in all, really happy with the buffs. It could have happened a little bit sooner, Blizzard, if you're watching this, but at least it's finally happened. The faction imbalance in PvP is, still is right now, you know, absolutely fucking insane. In the top 500 players on the arena ladders, I think that only 3 or 4 of the poor bastards are even playing Horde. 3, you know, it's kind of mind-blowing. Hopefully these buffs will try and, will help to even things out a little bit. I do think Blood Elves got it really good. It's almost hard to say now whether Undead or Blood Elves have the best racials anymore on the Horde. Might be something like Blood Elf if you're a melee and Undead if you're a caster when this goes live. Orcs are still going to be top tier as well. And then at the bottom of the pile, working our way down, we have Tauren, then Trolls, and then Goblins, at least in my opinion. So the biggest change there is to Blood Elves. I feel like they used to be about as strong as Tauren maybe when it came to racials, but now I would say that they're in the top 3 for sure. A buff to Arcane Torrent is so much stronger than a buff to Warstomp, by the way, just because Warstomp DRs with so many other stuns, whereas a Silence effect, it doesn't really have much to DR with at all right now, as Blanket Silences were largely removed at the start of Warlords. But anyways, that is all of my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think of the changes down below if you like this video. Do remember to like and subscribe for more, but for now, cheers for watching everybody, and I'm going to catch all of you guys just a tad bit later.